Good evening, friends. I, Haimanti Bagchi from www.tellmeyourstory.biz, welcome you this evening for a discussion on the book Everyday Gita. I'm privileged to be in the company of author Sunita Pant Bansal. Tellmeyourstory.biz calls for registration for the Writing Program Season 6 in association with Rupa Publications. To participate in this writing workshop, you must register by 15th of May. Let me begin by introducing the author for today, Sunita Pant Bansal. Sunita ma'am is a mythologist and a storyteller. Her forte is to decode Hindu scriptures to show their relevance and application in today's times. She has authored hundreds of books for children and 25 books for adults, young adults on folk literature and mythology. Her latest bestsellers are Krishna, the Management Guru, and Everyday Gita, both published by Rupa Publications India. Welcome, ma'am. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Haimanti. Thank you for inviting me on this forum. I'm sure it's going to be good fun talking to you.
Yes,
Yeah, thank
absolutely. This brings us to the first question of the day, that Gita is a book which is possibly in every household. We'll find it. And tell me about your first interaction with Gita. When did you read it first, and how did the reading experience change across the years?
Well, my first Gita was a very tiny Gita. It was like 2 by 2 inches, and it was given to me by my grandfather when I was a teenager. But I did not read that Gita. It was very difficult to read. It was Sanskrit, and it was, very small script. But from that time, my journey towards spiritual, books started. So I did not read Gita as my first spiritual book. I read like an autobiography of a yogi, and I read books of written by Vivekananda and all that kind of stuff, but not Gita. It was like towards the end of my school time, like, and I must be like late teens, like maybe 16. That's when I decided to read Gita, because there was this huge movement of Hare Rama, Hare Krishna those days. So, they would kind of come and ring the bell and give you this book, that Gita that they have. So
Yes.
that was one Gita that we had. And I thought that, since all these foreigners are distributing it, it must be very simple. So I was quite happy, and decided to read it. But it wasn't very simple, it wasn't really. I mean, I kind of started reading it, but it kind of, it was going like this and all over, like, but not inside. So that was my first experience, the age of about 16. Subsequently, I started reading Gitas, written by various other people, and commentaries on Gita by various people like Radhakrishnan and so on. And that's when I realized that everybody is talking about it differently, and but eventually, they reach the same goal. They talk about it in, using so many big words and, lots of examples and stuff, but ultimate goal is the same. So that was the time I thought that, at some point of time, maybe once I understand it better, then probably I'll, give it a shot. But that was after that many, many years passed. And as and when I would see any Gita in the market by anybody, I would just buy it. So I've got a huge collection of Gita at home, very many copies by practically everybody that I know of. So this journey began like about 15 years ago. This particular book that you're talking about, this began about 15 years ago. Yeah. So till that time, I had probably, matured enough to intellectually to kind of start writing. But that also stopped because I got busy with so many other things, at home, my daughters and all. And it was only when I was writing Krishna, the Management Guru for Rupa, that's when I recalled that I had some pages written of this Gita, like, from so many years ago. So that's when I dug them out and I read them again, corrected them, edited a bit, and sent them across to Rupa, telling them that I have this thing in my mind and I would love to do it in case you're interested. And they were very nice. They just promptly sent me the contract, and so we signed up. So after completing my Krishna, I began work on this, and that's how this book came about. It was like, this was the time it had to come. So I guess, all so many years, it was kind of hanging somewhere. But I guess this was the right time for it. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, ma'am, lots of people read Gita, and it's easy to philosophize or respect, but seldom do people make use of the knowledge in Gita. Is there a particular way in which the Gita should be read to internalize it better?
Uh, no, Gita, there's no way. It's like, you see, for anything, when you study any subject at all, if you just read it theoretically, it's not going to help you. Like in school, also, we give tests, exams, and all the science subjects that we study, we have practicals. So it has to be experiential. It's not something that, you read a book and you can internalize it. There is no methodology in it. You have to read it, so many times, because every time you read it differently, you understand it differently, because at that point of time in life you're at a position which makes you, have a different kind of awareness for it. So that's why, the more number of times you read, I guess, the better you understand. So there is no methodology for it. I mean, if you are if you're in the right space and you pick up this book and you start reading, you'll probably understand it, at the end of the book. By the time you finish the book, you'll probably understand it. So one can't really say that there is any method to understanding not only Gita, any scripture. It's because they're very deep. They're very, very deep, and they have so many layers. They're just layers upon layers. So every time you're going through it, you're peeling off one layer, and there's plenty remaining. So it's like an onion. Keep on peeling it, keep on peeling it. Just goes on. So no methodology, no.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Uh, so we come to the next question that you have written so many books, poems, stories, and articles for children, young adults, and since the age of 7, you're writing. I would like to
Yeah.
know what is your process of writing, keeping in mind the various age brackets of the readers also.
Process of writing, I think it varies from author to author. So, and since I did not study writing, I did not do a course, so nobody told me the process. So, so it's like something nobody has taught me, so I can't teach anyone. But yes, every person has a process, and I can tell you, I mean, the general process that I follow is that if I have an idea, I always write it down, and then I start. It's always with pen and paper. It's never directly on my laptop. When I begin any idea, so I've got these diaries tagged up, and I just write the idea. Then try to create a kind of a framework, because you need a framework to fill it in. So I try to create a framework that this is how the book is going to be, this is how I'm going to begin, and this is how I'm going to end. So these two things I keep in mind, and in between I'm going to fill it up. And the next step would be, how many do I want to give it chapters, or how many breaks do I want to give, and so on and so forth. So it's like I do it very methodically, very scientifically, in my way, because I'm a science student, perhaps. So that's kind of put things into my head, like all those physics experiments and stuff. So I write down everything, I make notes, and I create a kind of a roadmap for myself. And that's when I start following it. Then I create a calendar for myself, giving myself targets. Not that I may achieve them, but it's like giving myself targets. I may not achieve them, I may achieve them, that's fine. But at least there is something on my, pinboard here, that okay, this is what I have to do, this is the timeline. So that's how I tell myself. And that's for any kind of book, any kind of book. In For children's books, which are kind of smaller, it's kind of simpler, in the sense that, if there's small single story in a book, it's easy. Then you just have to have the plot of the story, and again I scribble it first. I always scribble it in diary, then I put it on my laptop. So for children it's simpler, but as children get older, and if I have to create something with educational content, then I have to have that in mind. So then it becomes slightly difficult, it might take a little more time. And then for young adults, it's pretty much similar to adults. Just the language is a little bit different, and certain things you don't, you kind of avoid, and certain kind of language you avoid. So that's about the only difference for young adults and adults. For children, it's yes, different. Language is much simpler. You have to get into that frame of mind that you're talking to a little one, like a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old, and you have to think that how much they should be given, how much they should be told, and what kind of questions are you going to get. If I'm going to write this sentence, what can be a question from a very smart kid? Because that happens, it happens. I mean, I have written books where a very smart kid has asked me, but why have you not named the yagna? You have just written that Dashrath performed this yagna. You should have given the name. And I was quite flabbergasted because I thought I'm writing for a 6-year-old, and here is this little kid who's barely 6 who's asking me this question. So you get all kinds. But then, yes, that is the basic difference. But overall, I like to create a structure always. I do not, even for a fiction, I like to create a structure always. It
Okay.
gives, it kind of makes me kind of together, like in the sense that I know that I have to do this much. If I don't give myself a structure, then I'll probably just go haywire. I won't be able to contain myself. So that's the reason I give myself structure.
That's a really insightful input you have given for all the budding authors over here, and I'm sure that some of your processes might be helpful for a lot of people.
One thing
So
that I must add
yeah,
here is that I do a lot of reading. That is
yeah,
something very, very crucial. For even for a small child, for 6-year-olds, or even 4-year-olds, I've written books, concept books or whatever. I do a lot of reading. I also understand who I'm writing for. For instance, education books, I would consult the NCRT guidelines. I actually get into that kind of method of understanding who my reader is and where they're
right.
coming from, and what their level is going to be in terms of understanding. And that's when I actually begin to write. So that is also very, very important. Reading so much, doing a lot of research on the topic. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So every person who reads Gita has their perception of looking through the text, like you already
Yes,
said. And
yes, yes.
sometimes it might be overwhelming for a person to decipher and
Yes,
deep dive into the text. And your book, Everyday Gita, is so simplistically put. So how did you process this kind of simplicity about such profound topics of philosophy and spirituality?
the simplest answer to this would be that my thought process is simple, and so if I have a simple thought process, it's easy for me to simplify. I mean, that's the simplest answer. But uh, the number of times that I have read Gita has helped me understand it very well, and understand it from all sides and all aspects. So that has really helped me in putting my thoughts through, like, the way I have put them here in this book. And plus, it's in my system somehow that I like to simplify things. I always like to simplify things. Like, I like to sort of unravel the knots. If you give me a gift, and if it's wrapped up with a ribbon, I will actually open the ribbon very carefully. I will not cut it. So I have this habit of kind of simplifying, and setting things right, kind of a attitude towards everything in life. So if I understand anything, and if somebody would ask me a question, I would explain it in the simplest possible words. And also, I'd like to give examples. And this habit, probably I should give credit to my daughters, because as parents, you tell them so many things. You try to teach them so many things. So how do you teach them? They're not going to listen to you if you tell them straightforward, do this because this is how it works, or this is how it should be done. So I used to give them examples to make them understand, something which I wanted them to do. So that is another habit I have of kind of giving examples from real life. So that's why this book, you see, all the examples is something very familiar. I'm familiar with. I have run a company, so I'm familiar with how what happens to a person who's running a company, a CEO, what happens, how they have to tackle situations. So, as a mother, as a wife, I run a house. So all those things are from my own experiences. So I like to share that with people because I think that they're also having the same experiences and I'm no different from anybody, any of my readers. So that is how I kind of use my experiences in the simplest possible words to express what I'm trying to say. Because I believe that if I talk in very difficult language, then people are not going to understand. They'll get bored, you know. So I tried. I want to keep the interest alive. So that's another reason of making it simple. Yeah.
So, ma'am, there are so many layers of understanding Gita, which you have already mentioned, and which really strikes you as a reader. So, like when you read it in your teenage, it might find a
Yes.
different meaning, and when you read it later in your life, it might unravel a different meaning altogether. So, would you like to talk about the relevance of the Gita across various life stages?
Uh, that's a seemingly short question, but with a long answer, because that's what the book is all about. Yeah. So what happens is, not only Gita, whenever we read anything, you know, it depends on our age, our circumstances in life, where we are at that point, and that's what colors our, you know, uh, brain, what we read. For instance, uh, if you're married, you have a background of various things, related to marriage, to family, to joint families, and so on. So your issues in your life are totally different. When you're in school or college, you have totally different issues. You may have peer pressure, you may have pressure of studies, you may have, competitive pressure, from your maybe your teachers or your parents telling you to do better or whatever, those kind of pressures, and getting admission into college. So those are totally different sets of pressures where you also, as a child in school, you know that your parents are there to guide you and teachers are there to guide you. The moment you get into college, you find that you're kind of little lost because parents assume that you have become an adult, and the teachers, the professors also feel that you are an adult. So there's a different way of people treating you that causes pressure. So there are different issues at different ages that we go through, like in life also, like not only marriage, but like a woman who's pregnant, she has different issues. After giving birth, she would have different issues. When her children are small, she would have different issues. When they grow up, so at every stage, literally, if you every 10 years, you can say you have totally different issues. So at that point of time, whatever you read it differently. It's like watching a movie. You may like you may have liked a movie 10 years ago, and 10 years later, when you see it, you might find it very silly. You might say, who laughs at this? What kind of jokes are they cracking? I mean, is it funny at all? Really? I mean, was this a hit? So it's like, something like this. So our own opinion, our own vision, our own thinking has evolved. We have evolved. It's life is dynamic. We have evolved. So as we keep evolving, we see things different. It's like, we say we see the sun, the movement of sun, but actually, the Earth is, revolving, isn't it, on its axis?
Yeah. Yes.
So, poor guy, the sun is there, no? And it's the Earth revolving, and then, and we say, oh, okay, so the sun has come here, and now the sun is setting. All that stuff we are talking. It's our perspective at that point, isn't it? But that
Exactly.
fellow is right there, and we have turned. So it's something like this. Our perspective changes all the time, and that's how our understanding of anything changes all the time. Not just Gita, anything. Coming back to Gita, because Gita is a simple philosophy, but at the same time, it is very deep, because anything which is very deep is also actually simple, because it's like the distance between 2 points. Maybe however deep it might be, it's a straight line. So uh, that's why I keep saying that it has layers, because As a child, when you're uh, trying to understand Gita, the words may not be comprehensible. But the moment you grow older, you may realize that, okay, you can be an Arjun, you can be in a dilemma, you can have these issues going against your, you know, relatives. So there are these kind of things which, and these are very basic things I'm talking about. But internally, there are very many more things. That's why every time I keep saying, every time you pick up the Gita, you open any page, and if any issue you have, it'll get resolved. Because overall, the entire Gita is the same. It's actually the same. It's a huge mass of energy. It's the same from one end to another. So anytime you need it, you just open it, read it, and you'll get some kind of a solution for whatever issue you have at that point of time. So Gita is, in that sense, a very very interesting book, or whatever you may call it. I call it energy, you know, because you get a lot of energy from it to actually live your life, and to also handle other things in life, to do everything actually. So I call it energy, because if you understand Gita, then you've taken the energy in, and every time you get stuck, you can have another dose. So something like that. Yeah, honestly, it is like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so beautifully put by you. I was just, thinking and internalizing each word which you were speaking. So it's really so beautiful. So, would you like to please talk about a lesson from Gita which stayed with you?
Uh, the main lesson which Gita is talking about, according to me, is that of detachment. That's my kind of, I should say, um, favorite lesson from Gita, and also I think my strength. It has become my strength, because this is something which if you crack it, if you understand it, then nothing can affect you in life, because obviously you're detached. So things will come and go over you, and they go past you. So that is something which is my favorite, lesson in terms of what I have learned from Gita, and which I try my best at all times to explain to people that what detachment is and how you can be. And it's never too late to understand it, never too late to start practicing it. And once you've cracked it, once you've kind of understood it, you just have to practice it, and you should be able to see the results soon enough. So in that context, if you don't mind, I'd like to read something from
Oh, sure, sure.
yeah. So this is on page 87, where this is chapter 6 of Gita, and it says that detachment should not be confused with renunciation of the material world. A detached person is not an ochre-clad hermit. A detached person is the coolest person you'll come across, one who's grounded even when they are at the peak of their career. People like Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa worked selflessly for others. They devoted their lives working tirelessly for a cause. They were karma yogis. They had renounced all selfish motives and had no material desires. They were in full control of their minds. Being selflessly devoted to work is as good as renouncing the world, because selfless devotion requires a certain discipline, which in turn requires controlling of sensual desires. A successful CEO of a company is the most disciplined of all its workers. After all, he has to run the company and take it to the top of the ladder amidst all the competition in the market. He cannot achieve he cannot achieve that if petty attachments distract him. Though we call such people cold-blooded and ruthless, they're actually detached. So this is how I've explained what detachment is, because people have this confusion. They say that detachment means that we'll become indifferent, or we'll become cold, but it's not so. Detachment has nothing to do with becoming cold or becoming emotionless. It's nothing to do with not having emotions. It's to do with how to handle those emotions. And in the same vein, there is what I'm trying to say now is, again, I would prefer to read it out to you.
Sure.
Yeah. So this says that, again from the same chapter, chapter 6, the world throws at us so many temptations that it is difficult to ignore them. But then why ignore them at all? Go buy a beautiful dress, but buy only one. The idea is not to throttle or suppress your desires, but to experience them and let go of them. Attachment to the objects of desire is the root cause of all misery. When we get attached, we want to preserve that emotion. We want more and more of it. If you open your closet and see, you will find more clothes and shoes that you actually need. You would see stuff that you haven't used for years. Why do you have all that? How did it come? It came from your greed of wanting more. This is true for everything, be it eating, exercising, anything in excess is harmful as lack of the same thing. The trick is moderation. If we do sufficient exercise and eat what is sufficient for our body's needs, we would not fall sick. People often fall sick because of either overeating or starving themselves. If we maintain a work life balance, we get to lead a mentally and physically happier and healthier life. The key is to know when to stop. So this is, how I've kind of handled the topic of detachment. And this is something, if you understand, and now this is just two paragraphs, 2 pages. And over and, Krishna had this habit of repeating like we also do. So he was repeating the same thing right through over and over again. So that is what, this book is. So every time you read, you pretty much get the same thing, slightly differently put. So this is my favorite teaching of Gita, and this is something which I'm always talking about. Honestly, always. You can ask my daughters. They'll tell you this, that whatever you were used to tell us, now you put it all together as Gita. So it's it's exactly what how I talk to them. So this is
So
what
it was
is my
really
favorite part.
so yeah, it was so simplistically put that even, what is detachment? Obviously, there are people who would think otherwise, that detachment is something that you will have to go to a hermitage in a,
Yes,
mountain and live there. But here, what we understand in this book is something which we can really live through.
yes.
So yeah, so thank you so much for this book. So, how's your journey with Rupa Publications? How was the editorial experience, and what value did such kind of intervention add to your work?
I must say that I would like to give all credit to my coming into this field of Krishna and Gita to Rupa, my publishers, because honestly, before I wrote Krishna, the Management Guru, I had written very many books for adults and young adults, but nothing like this. They were like, I was asked to write, say, about, Tibetan Buddhist masters. So I wrote a series. Then I was asked to write about, the body, mind, soul journey of Kailash Mansarovar. So I did that. So they were kind of simplistic. And for me, they were simplistic to write because they were kind of straightforward, linear kind of writing. Now, and then I was very much interested in mythology. So I got totally lost in writing books for children, and so lost that I mean, I've written definitely more than 1,000 books for children, all age groups combined. And I was totally lost in that sea. That's when Rupa got in touch with me, the commissioning, senior commissioning editor got in touch with me and asked me if I would like to try my hand at, writing something about Krishna in the 21st century. So I never say no to challenges, never ever. So that was a wonderful challenge. So I said, yes, I'll give it a shot. And they told me very clearly, we are asking a very number of people. And so we'd like to kind of try you out also. So I said, okay, it's a good experience. If they like it, it's fine. If they don't, it's okay. I mean, at least it's, write. I love writing. So any excuse to write is good for me. So I wrote a little, like 1,000 odd words about Krishna in the current scenario and, what he would do. But, and I just sent it across to them. And after some time, and I forgot about it. And then they got in touch with me saying that we like it. We like the way you're presenting it. So now can you do Krishna, the management guru for us and do it in a way that, it teaches management, the principles of management. So I said, sure, but at the same time, I have no experience of management. But they had that confidence in me, you see. So they said that you understand mythology, and take anecdotes from Krishna's life, and use them as examples and say how he has used management principles. It's easier said than done, honestly. It required a lot of reading, and I read a lot of management books only to understand the jargon, because they have a certain way of speaking and certain words that they use, which I wanted to use because I don't have that words in my head because I have, in that sense, I've not read those kind of books. So I did that. I read a lot of management books, and they gave me 20 topics of the management principles that they wanted me to explore, and a lot of reading and a lot of writing, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And when I gave it to them, they also loved it, and that is how I kind of was pulled out of my haze of children's books. I was hiding beneath it, and I was literally plugged out like this and put there as a person who's written Krishna the management book. And the book is doing well. And I was asked by Symbiosis also to talk to their first year students. So and while I was doing that, as I told you, Gita came into I remembered my Gita, and this also happened. So I think to bring me where I am today, talking to you, the credit goes to Rupa, nobody else. They could see something which was probably, hidden somewhere, and they could see it, spot it, pull it out, and present it. And they've done a great job of presenting it. The covers are good, they're very eye catching, and the team is good. I've got a nice rapport with the senior commissioning editor now. So, if I have any idea, I can just WhatsApp to him and say, hey, how is this idea? So, and because of that, my third book is also is going to be published by them. So I've become, kind of a hat trick writer for Rupa, 3 books in 3 years. So yeah, I think all credit to them, nothing to me in this.
Anything would you like to add about your next book?
Ah, that's tricky. There are 2 next books. So one,
Okay,
one
I
with Rupa.
understand that.
So one with Rupa where I've already signed. So I can say that it's historical fiction. I can only say that much.
Okay.
And and writing that was also a wonderful journey because all the books that I write, they are my personal journeys. Because whenever we write, we evolve so much. Because as I say that if you read, you automatically evolve, and if you're reading, assessing, kind of assimilating, and then writing it down, it's literally like eating the food, digesting it, like it's something like this. So it improves you in so many ways, in expression, understanding, description. So many things that it does to you, reading, that is. And writing it down is like an exercise of uh, revising whatever you had learned so far. So overall, the total impact is that you grow, you evolve. So I always evolve with every book I write, and there's always these books are coming out of from my own life experiences, which I love sharing. Because if how I have been helped by certain things, if I can possibly share with other people, I think that would be, and it'll give me pleasure. I'm sure the other person who's helped also will be happy, but it'll make me also very happy that I was able to help somebody get out of a sticky situation, by using my experience. So that is something, so all my books have. So the historical fiction also has a lot of my own emotions and my own angst, my own, lots of things. So that is, let's see when it comes out. I'm sure soon, maybe in the next 6 months. And then there's another one which is um, a very interesting book. And since I haven't officially signed up, I will not tell you a lot about it, but I can just say that it's philosophically based on an very on an ancient book. So it's like, I like to get things from the, as is my forte. I like to get things from the past and bring them out, clean them up, and show them how relevant they are today, and how you can actually make use of them. So that is what I'm doing in the second book also. So these are the two of my major books that are coming out. There are a bunch of books for children also, they're coming out, but well, I, they, because they're old commitments, so they will come out So that's okay. I'm used to that. But these are the ones that are very exciting for me. Yeah,
Really looking forward for your next books, ma'am. So
definitely.
if you permit, I would like to read a small excerpt from your book, which
Yeah,
I
sure.
feel that everyone it would help everyone to know about the book a little bit more. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
sure. Please do.
since Yeah, since it's a daily battle we fight, I condensed the 700 verses of Gita to fit into 365 days of a calendar. I have simplified the verses and explained their essence, drawing from my life's experiences. The purpose is to read one verse a day, understand and mull over it. I promise it will help you understand the world better. So
Yeah, that
another small excerpt. This book is an attempt to initiate the reader into the rhythm of the song of the spirit, demystifying life and its illusion. So it's so
yeah,
beautifully put. I was really touched when I was reading this particular excerpt, and I thought that it should be shared. So
yeah.
here we come to the end of this interaction with you, ma'am. So thank you, Sunita, ma'am, for this very insightful conversation and for your time this evening.
I'd like to add one little takeaway,
Yeah, sure.
which I think is important for everyone.
Absolutely.
I keep hearing people asking me, should should our children read this Gita? At what age should they read this? So I like to tell the adults, everyone, that it's important. We can't expect to give a book to a child and say, okay, read it and then understand and it's great and so on. We have to act as examples to them. So we have to read the book first, we have to follow it, and then the child will automatically follow, and then it'll be easier for us to also tell them to read because we would have understood it. It's easier to tell when you already know it, you've experienced something. But expecting children or teenagers or anyone to read and then follow it on their own is, I think, not fair. I think if the book comes into a household, everyone should read it. And in that sense, then they would have their own journeys in front of them mapped out and they would be able to apply it and they could probably discuss it. But I think everyone should read it in the family and not just a certain age group and then expect the other ones to. I've seen this happening. People are saying, oh, should I give it to my son? Should I give it to my daughter? Will he understand? So I tell them, listen, you read it first. You read it first, and after that, you give it to your son, saying, like, look, I have read this, and this is what it is. And I think it's very interesting. You also read it, it'll help you. Then he will read. But if you just buy it and give it to your son or your daughter just to read, then it's not fair. So that's what I just wanted to tell you.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, ma'am, for this inspiring talk. Um,
Thank you for
so
having me.
So I would like to remind that tellmeastory.biz calls for registration for the writing program season 6 in association with Rupa Publications. To participate in this writing workshop, you must register by 15th of May. Write, read, share, discuss. Till then, stay well, stay safe, happy reading and happy writing. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.